Hi, everybody. My name is Giovanna. I'm here with Hassan, and today we're diving into a big question. Who really builds the software that runs our lives, and how is AI reshaping that? Hassan, when we think about software, we often just think of developers, but it's actually much more than that. Can you please tell us what front end, back end, and full stack developers actually do?
Absolutely. So building software uh, requires a team. You have your backend developers. These are folks that build everything behind the scene. So your databases, your servers, APIs, the business logic, and they'll work with languages like Python, Java, or Node.js. We'll give more examples of the kind of work they do later on in the conversation. But you have your backend developers, and then you have the front end developers who build what users see and interact with. This would be the buttons, the forms, the navigation, and they work with languages like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or frameworks like React or Angular. And a full stack developer is simply somebody who is a generalist that can do both the front end and the back end work, which is really valuable for startups when you're looking to build an application because you don't need front end or back end specialists, but you can have a full stack developer who can do both types of work. Uh, let's come towards some examples. So we have Airbnb. On Airbnb, a front-end developer would be programming how the search bar looks, how the filters look, the map view, the aesthetics of that, and how the booking interface is. So everything that the user interacts with visually. And a back-end developer would be writing the code that handles how the matching gets done, how to manage multiple bookings, how to manage the payments and the user data. And a full stack developer would be somebody in Airbnb's case that would be able to do both the UI or the visual effects. So, for example, how the filters look or how they work, and then the back end logic of it, which would be how to sort the data and only show the relevant listings based on the filter chosen. Another example is Instagram. So in Instagram, the front end developer would build out how the feed looks. So when you're scrolling in the feed, how a picture looks or how a video looks, that interface that the user sees would be built by a front-end developer, and the back-end developer would be writing code that manages where the image is stored, how to process the different types of images you can take, and then how the recommendation algorithm works, so what image to show you. And a full-stack developer would be somebody who could do both the front-end and the back-end. Uh, yeah,
All right, thank you so much. So now that we understand the different types of developers, what other roles are essential in building software? What about UI, UX designers, product managers, and QA professionals?
great. So, great question. I think there's not only developers when it comes to building software, because great software is actually like building an experience. And so you have your UI UX designers. These folks focus on how the product looks, the UI, and how it feels or functions from a user's perspective, which is the UX. They would do research around how users behave when they see a particular kind of screen. They'd be creating prototypes. They would ensure that the final product is a pleasure for the user to use. So, Apple is a great example of this. Like they have some really good UI and UX because when you interact with the product, the aesthetics of it and how it just knows what you're supposed to do and what you want to do is just good user experience. A product manager is like a software project CEO. So they're basically responsible for everything and they work together to coordinate all the different professionals that are involved in building software. They're responsible for what needs to be built and why that needs to be built. So they'll do market research. They will often talk a lot to users, define their vision for the product and sort of create a roadmap around what needs to be shipped first or built first and then what needs to be done next. And they're often a bridge between the business goals and the engineering team. Similarly, we have QA testers or quality assurance professionals. These guys make sure that the software works perfectly before it lands in the market by writing test cases, running automated scripts, and reporting bugs by trying every possible condition. So when you're using an app, let's say Instagram, there's a QA tester who is working to make sure that you can't break Instagram by doing every kind of interaction with Instagram possible. There would be somebody who's a product manager thinking about what kind of new features to build into Instagram to make it more engaging for you, and a UI UX professional who would be designing all the graphics and the visual aspect, as well as sort of working closely with the front end developers in making the aesthetic experience of it pleasurable for you.
The developers, your software success, it depends on the UI and the UX designers for usability, product managers for direction, and QA testers for reliability. But let's make this simpler with a familiar example like Uber. What roles do each of these specialists play in making a product like Uber work super smooth?
Great. So when you request a ride, the backend team is doing the heavy lifting. So their systems are handling your location, data, finding the nearest drivers, calculating the fare using a complex pricing algorithm, and processing your payment. It's sort of the core engine of your interaction with Uber. The front end developer would be designing the rider and the driver apps, handling the map interface and the ride status and payment flows. They built the code that for the map that you see or the buttons you press and the real time animations of the car moving towards you on the screen. The UI UX designers will ensure that both apps are intuitive, so making sure the process is as simple as possible from sign up to easily setting up your pickup location to sort of seamless in-app payments and trip completion. And they design the graphics that the front-end developers add to the software using code. The product manager will be somebody who decides what features to prioritize. So like carpooling or tipping or trip sharing, adding multiple stops, and they would work with user input and user data and sort of the long-term business goals and define these features that the developers would be coding and the designers would be designing. And the QA tester would be testing for crashes, edge cases, like, for example, what happens when somebody cancels a ride in the middle of a trip, like how should the app behave, or, testing how the app performs on a variety of different devices. So that's the example of Uber, uh, how everybody can come together and build software on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, building software requires careful attention to detail across the entire user experience. How is AI changing that process? We're hearing a lot about smaller teams, increased efficiency. What are the numbers telling us?
So the impact is massive, and it's happening right now as we speak. A McKinsey study showed that software developers can now complete coding tasks twice as fast with generative AI.
Wow.
Tools like GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT can write entire functions, translate and generate code between languages, and identify bugs before a human ever sees them. Developers using AI-powered coding systems are reporting significant gains. Some studies show that development cycles are now up to 55 to 60% faster. And AI can do some of the heavy lifting. So startups can now launch MVPs with just 2 to 3 engineers instead of larger teams. One developer plus an AI assistant can produce what might have taken 5 people a few years ago. So this means smaller teams of engineers can now accomplish what used to require much larger teams, and it's really a force multiplier. According to Business Insider, AI startups have hit billion-dollar valuations with 50 employees or fewer as well. So that just gives you an example of how much of a productivity multiplier it's having, and how a lot of the repetitive work with writing code is made more efficient and faster with AI.
Wow. So the impact is huge. AI is transforming software development, speeding up workflows, shrinking team sizes. It unlocks faster innovation with fewer engineers. Lately, we've been hearing the term LLM engineer. What exactly does that role involve?
So an LLM engineer or a large language model engineer is a new specialization focused on integrating AI, specifically models like ChatGPT, into products. They're experts in what would be prompt engineering, crafting the right questions, instructions to get the most accurate and useful responses from the AI. They're also folks who help with more advanced tweaks or tuning with these models. So that would be fine tuning these models for specific tasks, building the infrastructure to support them. And their work often involves advanced techniques like retrieval augmented generation or RAG, where you have the models trained on a specific set of data. Implementing model context protocols, vector databases, embedding these models, prompt chaining, and use function calling, fine tuning these LLMs, and reinforcement learning with sort of human feedback.
AI isn't just assisting, it's reshaping entire teams and workflows. With all this AI powered acceleration, concerns about job displacement are natural. Which software roles do you think are most at risk of being replaced by AI?
So the roles that are mostly at risk are those involving repetitive and predictable tasks. For example, some basic code generation, certain types of testing and data entry, or document generation can be automated with AI pretty well. A Goldman Sachs report even suggested that AI could impact around 300 million jobs globally. However, it's less about direct replacement and more about evolution. For example, while AI can write test scripts, a human QA tester is still needed for more complex exploratory testing and to think critically about the user experience as well. Uh, and there's the aspect of communication and collaboration across teams. You need to get buy-in from a lot of people. You need to sort of connect the dots in the way that isn't really very programmable or very defined because it involves creativity. So I think those are things that are different. Despite all of this AI power, there are still things that only humans seem to do well. And projections show that while some jobs will be lost, a significant number of new ones, like the LLM engineer we talked about earlier, will be created. Back in the day in programming, people used to write software using machine code, which was like really difficult to write in. It was like 0 0 1 0 1, like just binary digits. And a simple software would be a lot more complex to write back then with machine code than it is with a language like JavaScript or Python right now. So when these high level languages like Python or JavaScript came, people thought that these languages would not, they would replace programmers, or that they would not be as efficient or as good as machine code was. But what ended up happening was that because these new languages increased a lot of productivity and unlocked a lot of new ways and more complicated things you could do with software, actually the number of software developers grew, and the roles became more advanced and more niched around along the sort of the possibilities of these new technologies. But the old job, which was writing machine code, just went away, and those same people became Python developers, or at least not those same people, but there was an evolution in sort of, as fewer and fewer of those old jobs existed, there became more and more of these newer jobs, and the total number of sort of developer roles actually increased many folds.
Thank you. AI automates many tasks, but human insight remains crucial, and new roles are emerging alongside the shift. Are there companies already using AI to handle work that developers used to do? And what does the future look like for software teams? And what insights and advice would you give to those wanting to stay relevant in all of this evolving landscape?
So yeah, there's a lot of innovation happening. Devin is an AI software engineer that can automatically build and deploy code. Klarna is using AI internally to help with their production code, also to help with a lot of their customer support and customer service. Canva is using the AI for design generation, and Notion is using AI to help create documents. Other companies like GitHub Copilot, which was co-developed with OpenAI, is using AI to be a pair programmer for developers. There are also platforms that use AI to automate entire uh, software development life cycles for certain types of applications. And AI can now generate a user interface from a simple text description or a hand-drawn sketch. However, what the AI isn't efficient to do is to build complex applications like Uber or Instagram or WhatsApp from scratch on its own. It is taking over more and more of the discrete tasks within that development process. So, instead of a developer writing code to make a button, the AI will write the code to write a button itself. Like you just tell it, hey, write me the code to make a button that's this size and that says this and it's blue colored. When I hover over it, it becomes black. AI will give you that code instead of you having to spend that time. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't sort of factor in the human aspect of other kinds of ways to think about. So there are a lot of these experiences inside software development, where as the problem begins to get a bit more complicated than a smaller use case, the AI isn't as efficient, but it's really, really efficient as a tool for a human developer to work with in building out a solution, because a lot of the repetitive tasks, or a lot of the tasks that might be easier to do are now able to be done quicker with AI. The future of software development is going to be about human AI collaboration, like a shift towards more prompt engineering instead of writing manual code, and then model integration as a key skill for developers. AI co-pilots will be embedded in different roles, and designers will be using AI to mock up prototypes. But they'll also be working with these LLMs to fine tune a couple of different experiences, test out that UI prototypes with users, observe the users, listen to what the users say directly, and also what they behave and do indirectly, and just be using the AI. But the best quality design output is not going to be only designers or only AI. It's really going to be a combination of the designer and the AI. So I'd say, like, the future is going to be embracing AI as a collaborator, not as a competitor, and learning how to prompt engineer and guide these AI tools effectively to achieve the goal.
For sure. Thank you so much. We touched on how AI is increasingly becoming a collaborator in the workplace and how companies are using it. Now, let's talk about what it still can't quite do well, particularly when it comes to building software. What areas will still require human focus and involvement?
Yeah, humans are essential for interpreting requirements, understanding the why behind a project, and grasping the broader business and user context that AI systems lack right now. AI can't really define long-term goals prioritize features based on business value or understand market timing. I mean, it can, but it's not going to be able to do those things well or in a way that could compete with humans. What AI excels at is pattern recognition and optimization, but it cannot really replace genuine human creativity needed for
Hmm.
inventing novel solutions, and designing groundbreaking architectures or thinking outside the box. Basically, is not how these AI tools work, because the way they're built is they're trained on all the past language or all the past content about a topic already, but that fundamentally sets them up to be not unique and not innovative and not creative. For example, when you're deciding building a new feature versus improving user retention, you need to have business intuition, and that's something that AI still lacks. Like it if you ask it to do it, it will give you an output, but that output is not going to be as good as a real human would, especially somebody who's really zoomed in about this problem and is focused on it. And software development is a team sport. Like key human skills like mentorship, negotiations with stakeholders, and building team culture are beyond the scope of AI. But I would say like AI is just a team member in that team, where humans are still a pretty critical and important part of that team to build software. And roles like product manager and technical leads make high level long term decisions about software structure, anticipating sort of future challenges and making complex trade-offs that still require human expertise and strategic foresight. AI can help these folks make decisions about their jobs, but it can't really make those decisions in any way that can replace these people right now. And discussions around bias and fairness and inclusivity in software still need human oversight. Humans still have to take accountability and responsibility for the security and impact of the software they create. And these are all emotions and feelings that AI cannot have and cannot really understand. So yeah, I think humans are still pretty important.
Humans bring critical thinking, long-term insight about users, things that AI still struggles to fully grasp. So, one final question for you. If I'm not a developer, but I have a great idea for an app or a software, how could being a part of the HBF Venture Accelerator help me bring that idea to life, Hassan?
Great. So we believe that the cost to launch an app or a software has drastically decreased thanks to AI. Now, a small team can build an app that would have required more than 12 developers a few years ago. So, with a budget of $75,000, we think most software ideas or AI applications can be developed to an acceptable minimum viable product or MVP level and be ready to be launched for testing with real users. That's why at the HBF Venture Accelerator, we co-invest $50,000 in companies to help them achieve exactly this. We partner with a founder who can bring in $25,000, whether from angel investors, their own savings, or earnings from their full-time job, and we can help them launch their software idea or AI app by co-investing 50K into it, and building that whole application for that founder within a 75K budget. And like, of course, we're going to have to talk to these founders to figure out what their idea is and what the timeline on this looks like. But broadly speaking, that small teams can be built to implement a lot of these ideas at a really affordable budget with AI, and that's what we're trying to do at the HBF Venture Accelerator. Our team sort of combines the speed and efficiency of AI, handling the grunt work with expertise of sort of senior engineers and product managers. This ensures your application is developed with long-term code efficiency in mind, minimizing technical debt and benefiting from sort of critical human input while still getting the productivity benefits of AI. Get the best of both worlds, human and AI contributions in building your product at a very reasonable total cost of $75,000, of which we cover 50,000. So you only need to contribute 25,000 paid over 4 to 8 months, as low as $3,000 a month, and so you can easily afford to bring your idea or your startup to life without even having to quit your full-time job.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. So, today, me and Hassan talked about who builds software and how is AI changing this. We will see you next time.
Take care, folks. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you.